Hi everybody. Today we are here with the next video in my Power of Attorney webinar series. And it's going to answer the question of how do you ask your parents if they have power of attorney, especially if they think you're going to be nosing into their business. And even more importantly, if you yourself, the children, do not have your power of attorney documents, why not? What are you waiting for? So, family caregivers who are asking how to have this, do you have your power of attorney document discussion with aging parents? We're going to share some tips there. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker who has served as a professional fiduciary for clients in the roles of agent under power of attorney, guardian, conservator, trustee, personal representative for over 20 years. So stay with me. I'm going to share concrete ways to have these conversations, why people don't want to talk about POA, and how you can get through this for yourself and for your aging parents. So please like this video, like this channel, follow this channel, comment, so that other people can find these videos and find the hope, help, and support that they offer. Your participation really, really does make a difference. So in this very detailed webinar, it's going to be a long one, so if you don't have time, you might bookmark it and come back later. I don't want to leave you with any unexpected surprises about power of attorney. We're going to talk how this conversation can have a significant benefit, especially if something unexpected happens, because let's face it, car accidents happen every day. Falls happen every day. Sports injuries happen every day. It's these unexpected things that can cause us or place us in situations where having a medical power of attorney, having a living will, and having a financial power of attorney is critical. So why even have this conversation? Why are we here? Well, studies show that people over middle age, 30s, 40s, and 50s, really would want their family members to know what they wanted if they become seriously ill or seriously injured. So that's your why. Do you want your life preserved by machines, or do you want extraordinary care? Or do you not want that care? What is it you want? So just telling your family isn't good enough. It's a start. But if you end up in the hospital and you don't have documents that say, no, don't put me on a feeding tube. No, don't intubate me. The hospital staff are going to do it, okay? So this is both the why to have the conversation and the reason to do the written documents. Because most people don't realize that it is best to put these whys in a document, in a medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, a living will, and a will, so that there's no doubt with your family, with medical providers, and there's most of all, no family disagreements. Well, mom would have wanted that. No, I think she would have wanted that. Dad would have wanted that. It's all clear. It's all spelled out. Even to the end of life where you say, I want to be cremated. I want to have a funeral service. I want to be buried. Or I don't want any kind of service. Put your wishes in writing. So these conversational tips that I'm about to share and all the other information can work with anybody, yourself, your spouse, aging parents, other family members. So let's talk about this conversation, because it really can be intimidating, especially if you don't have your documents done or you don't even know what is in these documents. There's other webinars that I have in this series that will explain exactly what is in a power of attorney document, if you are that agent, what you're supposed to do. So for these conversations about, hey, do you have this? The best advice I can give you is to prepare, to practice, and plan for the conversation, and plan for it not to go the way that you expect, so that if it goes that way, you at least have a response, and then you keep coming back to have that conversation over and over again until you actually make some progress. So let's talk about the steps that we're going to go through here. We're going to talk about why we don't want to talk about power of attorney. I'm not convinced I need it. Why would I need it? We're going to throw in some family complications about power of attorney, how you have that conversation, and then how to respond if your parents or your grandparents or even your spouse doesn't respond the way that you think they will. So why don't we want to talk about this? Well, It can be intimidating. We can think that it's too legal, right? That we don't want to get into all this legal stuff and we don't know what all this legal stuff is. But I'm going to explain it in such a simple manner in all of these webinar videos that anybody can understand it. You'll even be able to explain it to your attorney if you need to. It's not as complicated as you think. Okay? So talking about legal planning, again, specifically related to becoming sick, needing help, do you want to be buried or cremated? Well, it's not really at the top of your list, right? You got a lot of other things that you'd rather be doing. I get it, because it's a subject that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. So they delay and they delay and they delay until one day there's no option. They've got to do this, or it's too late and they wish they would have done it. So reasons people delay. I have had my clients tell me that if they create these documents, they are sure that something bad is going to happen. My question to them is, do you have car insurance? Do you have homeowner's insurance? Do you have health insurance? Do you have that insurance because you're expecting something bad to happen? No, you have it in case or if when something happens so that you're protected. So don't feel like if you execute these documents tomorrow, you're going to die the next day or you're going to be in the hospital the next day. That's not how it works. And I tell people, being prepared is always better than not being prepared, and then you have this mess that you have to deal with, or this crisis that you're trying to navigate through. Don't put yourself in that position. Now, I can tell you that I've had clients who did, right? I've had clients sign their power of attorney documents when they were in the hospital or in a nursing home, and if I was that agent, I had to be present because the staff had concerns about sending them home. Who was going to take care of them? They didn't have a power of attorney. What if they needed somebody to make decisions? Now, the good news is that some attorneys will actually do this for you. They will draft the documents and travel to a hospital or to a nursing home. If they're not a notary, they'll bring a notary with you to notarize the documents, or notary with them, right, to do these documents. So it's possible, but do you really want to be in that situation? Why not just do it before? So more reasons. Well, I'm not going to die tomorrow. I'll think about it tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes, and the next day comes, and you never do anything. So superstars, right? People in the press, people in the media, people you see on TV, they don't plan either. Perfect example, Aretha Franklin. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And as far as I know, when she died, she had no will. Seriously, what does it really take for people to do this? I know it can be hard, but it can be harder if you don't. So the other thing is, well, we don't know what power of attorney is. We don't know the complications that can happen, what happens if you don't have your wishes spelled out and notarized. And honestly, most people don't want to plan for aging, okay? We don't want to plan for getting old and all those unpleasant topics, right? And then if we've never done this before, right, we have no idea what's involved in the planning. So we're going to talk about all of this in this webinar. So the other reasons parents may not want to do this is because they don't trust their children. And that's a valid point if they have children who are not good with money or who are irresponsible or who don't manage their lives. And so you don't do this because you don't realize that there are professional fiduciaries. Like myself, I don't do this anymore. But there are people out there that you can hire to appoint, right? So next question is, it's too expensive. I don't have the money to do it. I don't want to contact an attorney. Well, I will tell you that you are much better if you contact an elder law, a probate, or an estate planning attorney. It's not that you can't download these documents online, but every state is different and every situation is different. So if you spend a little bit of money with an attorney, you might save a lot of hassles later versus downloading a document from the internet that's generic and it doesn't deal with some specific situation that you have. So how much does it cost? The cost is dependent on the attorney that you hire and the detail that you want, okay? So some power of attorney documents, 3 pages, 5 pages, some 25 pages, right? Some attorneys have a flat rate for basic planning that uses a standard, very simple template. Now, the restriction is that you have to know what you want to put in there And the more that you're organized, the better. And you don't want to have multiple drafts or rewrites because that adds to time, right? So in this case, time is money, right? If you know that you're going to want multiple edits, you're undecided, then instead of a flat rate, you're probably going to be billed at the attorney's hourly rate, which can be, with their paralegal, $150 an hour all the way up to $500 an hour, right? So it's really good to know if you want to know what you want when you're going into this. And I'm going to help you with that in this webinar. More organized you can be, less time and money. So when you complete these documents, you want to do all of them. So there's 4, right? Living will, power of attorney, medical, power of attorney, financial. I did those backwards. So a good attorney wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't say, hey, let's get all these done at the same time, right? You're here, let's get them done, be done with it, okay? Now, I've known attorneys to complete real simple documents, 2 pages, 5 pages, for a range of $1,000 to $2,000. Now, while you might think that is expensive, what is more expensive is if you don't have those documents and you're spending thousands of dollars being in a hospital, right? We don't think of those kinds of things. So you can call around to attorney offices and say, hey, I have a very simple power of attorney, living will that I want to complete. Do you do this for a flat fee or do you have an hourly rate? And see what they say and compare. And so as we go through all the steps in these webinars, there's 10 in total, right? What's going to happen is you're going to reduce your costs of doing these documents by knowing and having more knowledge. You'll have most of the answers to the questions the attorneys are going to ask you right at your fingertips. So worst case, best case, $1,000, $25,000, $50,000 if you are complicated. Again, if your money and your assets are at a minimum, there's not going to be a lot in those documents. But if you own property, if you're going to plan for Medicaid, which is a government program that can help low-income adults access care, you might spend a little bit more money. So again, call to investigate your options, ask if they have a flat fee for an estate plan or their range of hourly services. Be very specific about the documents that you want to complete. And again, go to the specialists on this: elder law, estate planning, probate attorney. Don't use a family attorney. Don't use an attorney who's your friend, because they're likely going to lack the expertise to do these documents in the way that they should be done. So on the page for this webinar program, if you haven't already seen it, if your parents are still resistant, if you're still thinking, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next month, 17-minute video called Eat Cookies by David Drummond. He is an individual who gets into a very tragic accident and has all of these healthcare interventions that he does not want and doesn't know how to get out of it. So that video is going to be very helpful if you're still not convinced why you need an estate plan that includes all these documents, because I can tell you that after watching this video, you'll have a much better sense of why everybody, regardless of their age, 21, 91, 101, should have these documents. So let's talk about family complications. So in a prior webinar, I talked about the idea that few families are perfect, right? We all have disagreements. Going to court, which is called litigation, is more common when parents have a lot of money and a lot of property, and children might be financially dependent on a parent for support. So before you approach your parents, it's important to consider how all these family dynamics might help or hinder this conversation. Do you have brothers and sisters? Would they be interested in joining in this conversation? Or if you have this conversation without them, are they going to be suspicious? Would they have an interest in being the power of attorney? Do you have a brother or sister who's disabled and living with your parents? Okay. So when it comes to doing these documents, your parents have to give somebody the power, right? They have to make somebody the agent. And so this is a lot of times where these family disagreements can happen, and why parents don't want to have these conversations, because they don't want to make it look like they're favoring one child over another, because children can feel left out. So if you want to avoid these family collisions, these family catastrophes, talk to your brothers and sisters about this and say, hey, do you guys have your power of attorney documents? I'm thinking of doing mine. We probably should talk to mom and dad about this. Do you have an interest in joining in this conversation? Yes, no. Then you'll know. Their response is going to be a telltale sign to you of what you might expect. So if they think that the conversation is a good idea, that's positive. If they start talking about money or wanting property or to make sure they get their share of your parents' estate, that could indicate that you're going to have some problems, right? But it's still better to involve them from the beginning so that there are fewer problems. And this way, if you do involve them, you're going to know if there's going to be more or less problems. So if you can work out some of these family complications, these glitches before you talk to your parents, might be a little easier path. Now, you might also want to tell your parents, hey, we want to have a power of attorney conversation with you. I've talked to all my brothers and sisters. We're thinking it's a good idea for us too. Are you open to having all of us discuss this? We don't want to make it feel like we're, ganging up on you when we're also thinking about this for yourself. But don't lie. You really do have to be thinking about this for yourself. So are your parents going to be comfortable with this meeting? Are they going to be uncomfortable? So the setting is really important. So who's the one that goes and talks to the parents? Usually it's the child that's most interested, right? But it could also be the child who has the best relationship, or the child who is most likely to succeed. So somebody's got to have this conversation starter. And again, like we mentioned, talking about legal planning isn't just a subject you want to just, drop on your parents out of the blue. It's kind of best if you have a plan about how you're going to initiate this and have the conversation so that it goes the right way. And if one of your brothers and sisters is better at this, instead of you having the conversation, maybe you have it with that brother or sister, or you send that brother or sister to go talk to your parents. But again, everybody has to be prepared because you want it to be successful. So how does your family usually have meetings? Do you have dinner on a Sunday and y'all get together and talk about stuff? Or do you not do that at all, right? Because the approach to this is going to help you gauge the success and how easy it is to do this. So you want to express this all out of concern. So example, mom or dad, we want to know what you would want for your care if something would happen. And did you know the best way to do this is to have it in writing and notarized? You don't, necessarily have to jump into legal documents and power of attorney, but kind of just say, well, most people put this in writing. And, by the way, it's usually in a power of attorney form or a living will or a will, so that I know what you want, or we as a family know what you want, and we make sure it happens. Because, maybe you've had a friend and their parents didn't have this and it turned into be a disaster. I can tell you just a recent story. I had some friends who had a grandparent, and he got sick and he went into the hospital and they intubated him. Now, they knew that he would have never, ever wanted this, right? But guess what? He never put it in writing. So he was intubated, and he had a lot of procedures that he would have never wanted, and he ended up dying. And he could have avoided all those procedures by just having a document saying, no intubation, just let me pass away if that's what happens, right? So there's a lot of reasons to do this. So when you think about having these conversations, you need to know that your parents may or may not be interested at all. You may have to approach them several times, or in some cases, right, parents have approached their children. My mother approached me about her burial planning. I was young. I was in my 30s. I didn't want to talk about it. I was crying. I was a freaking mess. But I can tell you, I was so glad that she did it, because when she passed away, it made it so much easier, right? So these are never conversations that we are going to be prepared to have. They may be highly emotional. There may be people crying about it. Not simple, okay? But you have to be persistent. So I have videos where I talk about persistence, right? So do you remember when you were a kid and maybe you wanted something, I don't know, a puzzle, a bicycle, some pink ballerina slippers, and you kept going back to your parents, going back to your parents, going back to your parents, and going back to your parents, and finally they just gave in, right? They gave you whatever it was you wanted. Well, this power of attorney document conversation is no different. Your ability to pester your parents as a child is no different, except now you are an adult. And you may need to finesse this degree of pestering so that you're not nagging, because obviously none of us want to be nagged, right? So again, that child most likely to succeed can have this conversation, and always have it from the point of concern. So let me give you some conversation starters. So mom or dad, hey, I talked to your brothers and sisters. We're all in the process of thinking about, making sure people know what we want if something would happen. And that's putting it in writing, and most likely in a power of attorney or a legal document, right? Do you guys have your documents done? Have you thought about this at all? Now, again, you got to be honest here. You got to make sure that you are really doing this for yourselves, right? You don't want to lie, because your parents may say, well, oh, really? What attorney are you using? Right? You're going to have an answer for that. Or your parents may say, not something I'm ready to discuss. And you can say, I understand that. I just, I'm going to keep approaching this because I think it's important. And if for any reason you don't want to discuss it with us as children because you don't want to appoint us, we're okay with that, but we'd like to know that you're discussing it with someone else, right? You got to open that door for them possibility not wanting to appoint you or them not trusting you, right? So I'll drop the subject for now. Know that I'm going to bring it up again. So please think about this and be open to talking with me or about us. So best case scenario, let's say, you know what? You ask your parents and they're like, yeah, we got our documents. So ask if they're willing to talk about their wishes with you so that at least you know, and find out if anybody in the family is appointed, because a lot of times this is happening less and less. And I'll tell you because there's a workaround, but a lot of times people appoint people in their power of attorney documents and they don't ask them. So that person eventually gets a call from a doctor's office or, God forbid, a morgue saying, hey, Sally Sue appointed you as her medical power of attorney or financial power of attorney, or you know what, you're the personal rep of the will. And these people are like, really? Nobody ever told me that. So what attorneys are doing more and more today, because that has happened, and sometimes those people refuse, and then what happens? That's a whole nother story, right? So attorneys are drafting a page that gets added to the power of attorney document that says, I, Sally Smith, agreed to be the agent of James Smith as medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, personal rep, trustee, whatever, right? So at the same time the documents are drafted, a person accepts that responsibility or that successor responsibility. Okay, so that kind of avoids these surprises which do happen. And I'll just give you a quick example. So years ago, and I may have told you the story before, but I was appointed as trustee for a man's son. I was also his medical and financial power of attorney. He had a medical emergency, unplanned, passed away. I got a call from the morgue saying, Pamela, hey, we have Mr. Jones here, and I hear you're the personal rep. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know he was sick. He passed away. So these unexpected things do happen, right? So the stats. Less than 20% of people have done these legal documents. So unless you and your parents are planners, you may not be in this 20%. You may be in the 80% of people who have no documents. And so if your parents say, if you say, hey, mom or dad, you got these? And they're like, no, what is that? So you could also say, hey, you probably already know this, but it's important to have these documents completed in case you're ever in an accident. Would you be interested in talking about this? Because I'm thinking of doing my own. Again, still not convinced. Go back to 17-minute Eat Cookies, David Drummond video. So you just see how this is like a circular process, right? You start, you hit a little roadblock there, you go back to the 17-minute video, you keep talking, you keep going back, you become that broken record. Okay, so let's say that you're not ready to do this for yourself, okay? But you've had a friend or something that's happened and their parents didn't have the documents. You could say, hey, mom or dad, I'm not quite ready to do this for myself, but one of my friends had a parent that was in a car accident. And they went into the hospital and they didn't have these documents, and boy, was it a mess. So are you comfortable? Would you be okay talking about this so that we know what you'd want if something happened? And, might you be willing to put it in writing? Because my friend's parents didn't have it in writing, and boy, it was a real mess. And you could even, if there's a story there, go on to tell them what a mess it was. So again, it's kind of like repeat, 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 go through the cycle, never give up, because it really is important to do these. And as the children, right? It's important for you because what if you have children? What if something unexpected happens to you and you just don't know what is going to happen there? It's important. So the next video that follows this, I'm going to go into great detail about what I call surprises, right? Surprises of not having the documents, the surprises of having the documents but not realizing the unexpected things that can happen in the medical system and in the financial system that can have you thinking differently about the information that you put in these documents. That's a whole separate conversation, and so there's a whole separate different webinar on this. This was really, why should I have the conversation? Why is it important? How do I have it? And to keep going around and round and round, or forward and back and forth until you get it done, both for your parents and honestly both for yourselves. I'm Pamela D Wilson. If you have any questions or comments, you can post them below. I will respond. I also have a Facebook group called the Caregiving Trap where you can learn from other caregivers in similar situations. You can also go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com. There is a lot of help and support there. Please, again, like these videos, follow the page so that we can help more people. Your participation really does matter. If you want a consultation with me, you can go to the website, PamelaDWilson.com, fill out the form on the Contact Me page, and I will respond. Sending you all lots of light, love, happiness, support, and wishes that you will do these documents for yourself, if not tomorrow, sometime very soon. I'll see you all again soon in another video.